Hey everybody, Daniel from Spacedock here.
And Alasdair from Spacedock as well. Hello.
Yes, very exciting. And we are here today with a interesting change of pace as we've decided to do sort of a behind-the-scenes video.
Behind-the-scenes Force Recon thing.
On how we've been doing Force Recon with the Expanse team and show off some of the artwork that hasn't been used.
Yeah, because all this, we got a whole bunch of assets to use for the various videos, and a lot of it included a lot of cool concept art, which... some of it was sort of totally inappropriate for the videos, or didn't quite match up to what we were talking about.
Spoilers, and so I should point out, by the way, that there will be full spoilers in this video. Mm-hmm. We'll be talking about Season 3 and stuff, so turn away if you've not seen that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to just kind of use this video as an opportunity to talk about how we've been doing it, and also show off some of the cool concept art which we otherwise haven't shown off yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, strap in for that.
So we're going to start out with the Truman Class, because that was the first ship we did.
Yeah, that was episode 1.
And that was one of the ships that had quite a lot of information already in the fiction, which was quite nice. It had already been named, and it was quite extensively featured in Season 3. So there was a lot of artwork for it and a lot of shots of it in the show.
Which is something that I'm probably going to talk about quite a lot over the course of this, was just complaining or praising various ships for how frequently they actually appear in the show, and how many long beauty shots they get.
Yeah.
Truman Class sort of sat nicely in the middle for that, for nice sweeping shots. A lot of the shots that they have involve it like decelerating towards which planet did they go to? Was it Jupiter?
or Io or Callisto and all those.
Yeah.
During what was it? Season 3, episode 5 has a mountain of great Truman Class shots.
There's that one shot where they're launching the proto-molecule prototypes at it in missiles, and there's a shot where it's shooting everything down with all its PDCs.
Yeah. That's when it's firing at its own fleet after the mutiny.
Yeah, there's that as well. That was a really good shot for the show. But,
that was we used that shot in full, right? During the episode. It was
the PDC shot. Yeah,
it was really cool shot, and you can see its railgun firing as well at the end of that. Which is really nice.
A lot of them are quite hard to find shots where they're actually shooting, or they'll literally only appear for a scene or something. Most of the time it's Rocinante shooting or doing various things, but like for these various, I guess, more obscure ships, sometimes it's hard to find footage of that.
Yeah. There's a lot of artwork for the ship, which we'll go through now. I should also point out, since we mentioned the railguns, by the way, there were only really like 2 or 3 things that I wrote for this ship, because it was quite fleshed out already. I'm just trying to remember what is original. I came up with the manufacturers and weapon types. There was Redfield Ballistics was the PDC manufacturer, which I used again, I think. Oh no, I didn't. I deliberately didn't use that again on the Leonidas, because I was trying to sell the idea that the Leonidas was really old.
Made from old, crappy company stuff.
Yeah, but I've also tried to establish these consistent naming conventions. Like all of the UNN railguns use Patton as a suffix, and all of the... Martian ones are named like they have like a name in quotations. So, for example, for the Scirocco, I had V16 Stiletto railgun.
And the Stiletto being quotation marks.
Yeah. Whereas in the UNN ships, I have had the Dawson Patton and Farron Patton railguns, which are both Farron Patton for anybody who's been keeping track of the Sojourn. That's a bit of a self-indulgent reference on my part. Farron Patton is the surname of our protagonist. Not Farron Patton, but Farron is the surname of our protagonist. And this was also I really like this design, and I'm always I said on Twitter it's like Christmas every time I get sent one of these packages of assets.
Oh yeah, it's great,
because it is great stuff.
All these massively like high res images you get for them, and I like these ones that properly illustrate where everything is and what everything's supposed to be.
Which you've been replacing the written annotations.
Oh yeah, a lot of the time I'll skimp out these lines and annotations, and actually throw in the old classic Spacedock Pyrrolin. Yeah. Just annotating everything.
I can't be thankful enough to Alcon and Northfront Studios for providing us with all these assets. It's incredibly cool to be working on this. It's a serious privilege. I'm amazed that it's happening.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic to be able to, and I'll talk more about this in a minute when we get to the Morrigan and stuff, but the to be able to write like the backstory for these ships is incredibly good.
It's really cool. It's really cool.
It's amazing. So anyway, there's you can see the docking bays here, which we I remember I was trying to figure out the right kind of volume for these, because I needed to come up with the number of skiffs that it carries. And
was just going on to a different topic here. Was the Truman Class the ship that the at some point in the show the captain of Scirocco said that they had like 10 times as many guys. Or was that the Leonidas?
No, that was the Leonidas.
That was the Leonidas.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's in season 2 where they're trying to racing for Phoebe.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but anyway, the with this one, I was trying to give it the right amount of skiffs. I gave it. I named the standard UNN dropships as L-type dropship skiffs. So it's another naming convention thing I did. I went for all the UNN dropships are just a letter and then type, whereas the Martians actually name theirs. Like the Scirocco has chariot type dropships, whereas the UNN have L-type and M-type dropships.
Right.
So I was trying to like create noticeable differences. So here we go over to the interior.
Some more art here. This is more really cool concept art that we ended up not using for the actual video. Mostly because there are shots similar to it in the show that feature actual actors, whereas this is just concept art.
I really like the bridge of the Agatha King. It's a really nice set, and
or a bridge slash.
It becomes the observation lounge.
Yeah.
Later on, I mean, props to them. They've obviously only got so many sets, but the conversion was pretty good, I thought. And
what was different? They had like they had like a bar.
I only
it's
noticed.
An observatory now.
I only realised when they went and got some bottles of wine out of the wall. And I was like, what? Why is that on the bridge? But yeah, once the season played out a bit and they were using the big ops table and everything, it really started to fit.
There's been a lot of cool ops table shots in season 3 in general.
Yeah,
a lot of cool ones on the Behemoth as well.
We'll
get to later
with the Hammurabi in the episode 5. So this is really cool. It's very Galactica, the CIC of the Truman Class.
I'm just glad these guys actually updated the uniforms, not just wearing these skin tight blue latex suits in the actual show.
The way it has the consoles hanging from the roof above the ops table, that's very Galactica.
Well, it's cool because the whole thing has clearly been very thought out and designed to function in 0G.
Yeah.
They've got these ships and monitors which are very affixed. The only thing that wouldn't really work with the guys at the ops table, I suppose. Yeah. But yeah, moving along here, we've got another concept art of one of the hallways, which unfortunately didn't get used, but it's also very cool.
It really is. I can't stress enough how nice these sets are. This ship has a really nice interior.
Yeah.
And they made the wise choice of turning the Thomas Prince into a Truman Class, which it wasn't in the book.
Oh, wasn't it?
So they could use the same set. Did it have another
named class?
Yeah, it was a Xerxes class battleship, which
I thought that was formerly the one that the Leonidas was.
No. The thing is, we'll get to this in a minute.
Okay.
A lot of people were expecting what is now called the Leonidas class to be the Xerxes,
right?
But I ended up not doing that because the dimensions don't line up. Like the Xerxes is explicitly described in the book, like by meters and stuff, and it's like pyramid shaped and much longer. And I didn't want to use that name for a ship that is so obviously different.
Medlab.
So this is the Medlab where we can see Admiral Wynne and
who is
Kochar.
Yeah. Christian's bodyguard.
And this was, I think, it was very blue in the episode. The scene was lit very brightly blue. Which,
that's right. They had these massive lights in there, didn't they?
Yeah. I don't know if this set was changed much from the concept. It's the same kind of shape where the door is and everything, but I feel like I might be misremembering, but they might have had a different looking door and stuff in the final version.
I'm not sure they had this room that went out with another door behind there as well.
I think maybe that was there, but we just it was never framed properly to see that. Because if you look at those lockers over there, I know there is a bit where he goes and gets like a flat pack EVA suit for very quickly.
Oh, yes.
And I'm wondering if that's there. So this actually is slightly different. This is
so the shot that we saw before that was the same as this was the Agatha King, and this is
the Thomas Prince, which has different coloration. I'm assuming that's because this is like an ambassadorial ship or something. It's got the gold trim.
Because the plating around the engines at the bottom are now entirely blue with the gold trim around the top, which is really functionally the only difference.
Yeah, I think I'm wondering. I couldn't answer you as to exactly what the decal change means. I know the VFX team just changed things just to keep it original most of the time, like not just with coloration but also with like modules, like the ship that chases the Razorback in season 3 is Leonidas class, but it's got some subtle differences, like it's missing its normal launch bays and things. They do change the configuration of these ships a bit, and this one I would imply that it's because it's a sort of diplomatic ship carrying envoys, but of course nothing. Only the vetted scripts become canon, so don't think of anything I say here.
Oh yeah, we should just say now that none of this is
confirmed or anything. Only in the vetted normal episodes.
So here we have the Morgan Class.
Now, I love this ship so much, and this was the ship that I wrote a pitch to do this series to the Expanse team.
Oh, that must have been like a year ago.
Like a year ago,
yeah.
And originally Norton didn't go anywhere, but eventually something came of it. But the pitch I wrote took this ship, which at the time was like Martian Ship 3.3D or whatever, like it was some background thing. And it was, we see it as the Scipio Africanus in Season 1 when it inspects the Belter ship. And it's in 2 really, really brief shots.
Yeah, and, very brief.
And then it's also in Season 2 when Alex bumps into one during his little slingshot maneuver. And I love this design so much. It's so cool. Like, it's half the length of the Rocinante, and it's just this perfect, like, angular, like, prism shape, and it's such a cool design. And I really wanted this to be fleshed out. So what I wrote as my pitch to get this, to try and get this position, have the chance to do this, was fleshing out this ship, and I named it Morgan Class after a ship that is mentioned in passing in Season 2, the MCR Morrigan, so that we can now infer that was the prototype of the class.
Another fun fact, a lot of the MCRN ships have certain patches, like the Scirocco and the Donninger as well. And Dan actually initially designed one for the Morgan class as well in his pitch.
Which some of you may remember from Twitter, if you were following me a year ago.
Which ended up becoming the patch for the Guinevere.
Yeah, very, very slight alteration of that patch became the Guinevere's patch for the Sojourn.
Yeah.
Which is a cool little origin story there. So even if I hadn't done this Expanse series, that would still have come of it. And this is the only piece of proper artwork we got for this ship, because like I said, it was just a background ship.
Oh yeah, this is the only thing we got from this. And as Dan said, it only appeared very briefly in a couple of scenes in the actual show, so stitching together a full video for something that has almost no content on is a struggle. It's a struggle.
Well, I'm so happy we did it, because I got to flesh this ship out completely. It was a blank slate, basically, aside from the term Patrol Destroyer, which appeared on its subtitle in the show, underneath its name. That was pretty much all there was. And I came up with all this stuff about how it could be double stacked to be carried by the Donninger class with more space, and how it had been used by Captain Yao and all this.
There were these comparisons about how the Tachi was
twice the height or twice the length.
Of the hangar bay of the Donninger, and these illustrations showing how the Morgan could also fit in there.
And we also came up with Narraman Dynamics for the PDC manufacturer. Narraman is a city mentioned in, I think, Gods of Risk, the expanse novella, which is on Mars, and it's mentioned very quickly as being famed for its industry. So I attached a ballistics company to that location.
Very appropriate. And here we go.
So here's the
we're on the Razorback now.
This is one of the. We didn't use this in the end. This was a fake kind of advert we made for the Proserpina Sunflare, which is what we named the Razorback's model. And I'm very pleased with this. Proserpina in Roman mythology is the daughter of Ceres, which seems very appropriate for
that's right.
And also later consumed by the underworld, which is also very appropriate. It was amazing how well it fit. So we made this poster, which didn't make it into the final version, but I thought it was quite cool to include them.
We ended up using something similar, though.
As another, just a brief bit of doodling that we did.
Yeah.
So here's some of the concept art for the Razorback. This is upside down.
That's actually. Right. This one is upside down
because we flipped the image so that the ship's nameplate would be the right way up in the shot. Which you parallaxed this, right?
Yeah. So for a lot of the videos, you might notice there's one of these concept art pieces which is generally thrown in at the end or occasionally the start, where the image has been parallaxed and you sort of cut it out, do some fancy stuff, and have it move slightly over the background, and like the focus shifts. And I
hope you like that, because there's going to be a lot of it in the Sojourn.
Yeah, it's kind of something similar we're going to going for in the Sojourn. But,
I'd like to actually, while we're here, point out that the way the show has adapted the Razorback from the book is amazing. This is such a cool ship. Like
there was a lot of like concept art from fans and stuff.
Of what everyone was very, very excited about how the Razorback was going to look, and they really nailed it. Like, this is gorgeous. It's so minimalist, and like it just looks fast.
It's just like the engine, which you can see most of the inner workings of there, with this very simple, like pretty much like arrowhead, just like thrown over the top of it.
It's like when you have like a supercar or something, and it's got like the glass roof for above the engine, like glass window above the engine, so you can see all the workings. It's that kind of thing.
It's quite similar a lot to those like really high end sailing boats as well, the racing sailing boats. So they're just these two thin bits of boat attached very thinly through the middle with like a massive sail, minimalistic, efficient.
I like the big RCS clusters on the tips of the sort of pontoons there, where it's like it gives it a reason to be that kind of like dart shape, where it has this like big anchored points to roll really quickly and turn around. And we actually had to come up with how space racing worked.
Oh yeah, that was a nightmare.
which took a lot of work. Trying to figure out how exactly like interplanetary pinnace racing would happen.
Yeah,
and we came up with some race names. I think with there was what was it? Titan. It was Titan and Enceladus, some kind of circuit.
There were 2 moons around Jupiter, right? That we ended up doing.
Yeah, we generally Saturn. We generally came up with the point that it would need to be some kind of markers or satellites, because otherwise, like there are no sort of choke points or sort of points of strategy in space to build a track around. So you'd have to just dump like relays in a certain configuration, and then have it be how quickly can you burn from point A to point B, and then readjust and then burn from point B to point C.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I liked about that video was how we discussed how it became more about pilot endurance than engine strength.
We realized that was going to be like it's ironic, really, that something about space racing like this would ultimately swing back to like less about engineering and more about how you can train your pilots to be able to
it basically becomes an athletics competition.
Yeah, exactly.
And we talked about how sponsorships would increase with acceleration drug manufacturers and things like that, because eventually, and it's mentioned in the book actually, one of my favorite paragraphs from the novels is a part where Alex and Amos want to buy an engine upgrade for the Rocinante that will take them from being able to go so fast that it'll kill them all to faster than that. And Holden's like, what's the point in this? We'll never be able to go anywhere near that without dying. And it's like, no, but it's so cool. We've got to have it. So it's really great stuff. It's and that principle is seen here in the Razorback, where it is more about endurance than speed.
And moving along.
Okay, so this one was a lot of work went into how we were going to do this, because there's a lot of interesting points about this is the Nathan Hale, of course, from the show, and a lot of it had to be straightened out. There's a lot of people were hoping this would be the Xerxes class battleship from the book, which, as I explained earlier, I didn't want to do because it doesn't match the description. And
so you ended up going for a very tonally similar name.
Yes, I decided to flip it on its head and go with Leonidas class, which I also tried to make appropriate by talking about how it was quite defensively oriented and sort of in like very, really powerful PDC field. It can't be assailed with torpedoes.
I think one thing to point out here with this is that it was built up to be very large, but also very like out of date.
Yeah,
and I think aesthetically you get that vibe because it looks just like a modern like battleship with the 2 giant artillery guns and on either side of it. That's just been kind of slapped together.
I should also, if whoever designed this ship is watching, I must apologise for basically throwing this ship under the bus narratively, because I thought it had to happen that at least one UNN ship threw itself on its sword in the name of making the UNN look as crap as they're supposed to be, because they're supposed to be horribly outdated and like in this complete economic spiral, unable to innovate in any way. And I basically I came up with this as sort of like this design by committee attempt to use no money to do everything, and it's like this bureaucratic nightmare. And it's kind of like we've had this happen in real life with things like the F-35 fighter and the the Bradley troop carrier, where so many people are invested in like attaching different features to this one thing, and there's no resources, and it just becomes this mess. And that's what the Leonidas is. It's
on paper, it seems very impressive because it has all of these PDCs and all of these railguns and all that. Like it's in terms of quantity, there's a lot more there than a lot of even like the MCRN ships.
I had to dial it back quite a lot, because when I was sent the TXT file with the actual weapons complement of this thing, I was like, well, this is just better than the Donager, and that can't be the case. The Donager needs to be the best ship. That's the whole narrative, because this had the same 2 big railguns as the Donager. It had more PDCs. It had like a massive number of torpedo launchers, which we wrote in as being really inaccurate. And
that's what a lot of this came down to, right? It's like what actually makes different ships more effective in combat. Is it just like the number of PDCs? Is it like how powerful the guns are? Because you were saying that railguns, which is just like accelerated tungsten, they've got basically infinite range. It's really just limited by how quickly something can react to and then move out the way of. So it's more dependent on the other ship, not the ship that's firing. So we had to come up with several like workarounds for that.
There's also I like that we basically made it so all of the weapons on this ship are sort of reactionary. It's like our guidance systems aren't very good, so we're just going to give it more guns so that there's a higher chance of it hitting, and they keep reacting in this way. We need more PDCs because the PDCs are no good. We need more missiles because the missiles are no good. Until eventually the ship weighs 5 times what it should do, and it's really slow, which is what we ended up doing.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's got such a big profile, if you've got a slow ship with a big profile and you're up against railguns, you're dead. That's it. That's all there is to it. You need to be small and fast. That's the only defense against railguns.
Yeah.
And also, if we can briefly talk about... these were all taken from the turntable, these shots, which I quite like. If we can briefly talk about the dropships and the troop complements, which was all kind of derived.
Oh yeah, that was a whole other fiasco.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of that was derived from one scene where they're both racing to Phoebe.
Yeah, Scirocco and then Nathan Hale are both racing to Phoebe, and the captain of the Scirocco gives us a throwaway line that says, "We received an intel report they were carrying 10 times our number." Which was hard to reconcile because the Scirocco is an assault carrier. It's a troop transport.
It's a troop transport. All it has to do is carry dense numbers of troops.
Yes, and the battleship is not. And apparently a battleship carried 10 times the number. And when we were coming up with the crew complements of this, it was quite difficult to do because every time we came up with a new number for the Scirocco's troop complement, we knew that it would be 1/10 of the Nathan Hales. And eventually we kind of had to settle on the idea that... either the Nathan Hale was overloaded for the purpose of the mission, or the Scirocco was understaffed.
I mean, this being overloaded for the mission would be quite totally appropriate for it just being overloaded in every other regard.
And we also leaned the Scirocco in the direction of carrying fewer, better troops, which fits the MCRN philosophy very well.
There's one scene we might say, we'll talk about more when we get to the Scirocco, but there's one scene when you actually look inside the dropship and it is filled with 8 normal Marines and then 4 Marines in power armor.
Yeah.
So we kind of took that as a baseline. Like, if these dropships carry and deploy on average like 12 guys.
Yeah, and there's 3 of them.
Yeah. Then you could say like that would be likely to have like 36 guys. We kind of used that as a baseline.
We also I experimented with the idea of saying that certain ships of this type were handed over to the United Nations Marine Corps to be handled by them, which would explain the decals on the ship, and also why it was used in the Anderson Station incident. But eventually I think we just decided that basically it seems like all UNN ships that carry Marines have Marine decals on their hull somewhere, so we didn't need to kind of hand it over in that respect. But if I can briefly talk about, if we go back there just a second.
Sure.
If I can briefly talk about the railguns here, because these are medium railguns, and I wanted to make it so they were turreted, but could only turn when the ship was not under thrust.
Not turreted.
Which was a means I wanted to use to make the Donager better. I want the Martians, the new Martian stuff should be able to articulate railguns while under thrust as a huge advantage and like modern thing. Whereas I imagine when these railguns are locked forward, they seal in, and there's more structural support. If they're free and spinning, then you're accelerating, or they recoil from each gun. The bracings can't handle it. It's subpar construction made quickly. The UNN do everything cheap, basically. So that was a nice vulnerability I wanted to set up there.
Also, these ships sort of stay in circulation in the fleet for like ages after these like huge glaring flaws are put out. But here we go. We've got quite a few of these.
This is the Behemoth, which has a lot of artwork, and this is this is a piece of artwork that's been like highlighted with diagrams for us of the Behemoth's aft. And I'd like to quickly point out something very cool here. That ship in the center in blue is the Guy Molinari, which is the ship that boards Thoth Station at the start of Season 2 and assists in the planting of the nukes on Eros later in Season 2. So it's we can see consistency in the OPA's fleet. They're still carrying the same ship around with them.
Oh, right.
Even now they have their big flagship.
I want to talk about the Behemoth a little bit, just purely from the making the video standpoint.
Cool.
This one was a pleasure to make the video for. We got so much concept art for it. It appeared almost exclusively in these huge, big, long, sweeping, dramatic shots. Both when it appeared as the Nauvoo in Season 2. Was that Season 1?
Both.
Yeah. And again, as the Behemoth, as the OPA retrieved the Nauvoo and then attached all the thrusters to it to bring it back. So just in terms of great shots to work with, the Behemoth is well up there. Also, I think the next clip shot after this, which I assumed is something that you used when talking about how many PDCs and how many railguns it had, you get these nice beauty shots, and then you get these, which very clearly illustrate what everything is and how it works.
I would also point out that on the left we can see the torpedoes on this ship are loaded like loading a Napoleonic cannon or something. Like they get drones to just shove the torpedoes down the tubes, which is so belter. It's great. They just welded this missile bay onto the outside. It has no internal loading system. They have to use these drones to just ram torpedoes down there and then fire them. That's such a great bit of like visual world building there. And you can also see how they've been cannibalizing Drummer's old construction ship that they brought they brought the Behemoth back with for parts.
Cannibalized salvage ship. Oh, cool.
There's also we can see the tugs here that are attached for maneuvering and the railguns. And I named these railguns Zacho Satara series railguns, which is Law Star in Belter Creole. That's the first half of because the way they do the syntax, it's like Zacho is the opening for law or lawman or police.
Oh, cool.
And then Satara is star.
Awesome.
So a nice orthographic shot here. We can see the big elevator rods on the sides with these sort of bathysphere type things.
It did make me laugh, the scene in Season 3, which you talked about in the video as well, about how it's liable to just complete energy failure when it's firing certain weapons. And the scene that they actually have that, there's one bit where Drummer tells them to fire.
Yeah.
And then they fire, but they don't, and all the lights go out and everything shuts down. But what they're firing are the torpedoes, which are just loaded in by external drones, first of all. And the firing should only require letting them go, and then
the power systems must be really broken if
all they have to do is let go of a torpedo.
Yeah, literally
just causes the entire thing to shut down.
Yeah, I would totally. If it was a railgun, then that is presumably massively power.
Oh yeah, because imagine if you even tried to fire a railgun.
I can only assume that it just can't. I think in the book it's made quite clear that it just doesn't work as a warship. Like it would never ever properly function if they tried to fire all of its weapons and maneuver and stuff. And
it's a very large, very expensive figurehead.
Yeah, that's what we talked about in the script. With it's more valuable as a symbol than a spacecraft. I also like how in the show the drum has engines to spin it, which it didn't in the book. The book it was just mechanical, I think. And we actually see big like fusion torches sticking out of the outside of the drum to spin the thing around.
Awesome.
So here it is, the Nauvoo, partially constructed. This is some Season 1 art. And
I don't think this got used in the video, actually.
No, I think we were thinking about parallaxing it, but then we didn't.
Well, because it was about the Behemoth, not so much the Nauvoo.
Yeah. But this is a nice scale for Tycho Station at the bottom there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is cool. It's so much smaller than the ship it's building, which is pretty awesome. So here's the drum, which I'm so excited to be seeing as a book reader. I'm so excited to be seeing this setting, because the inside of this ship is like one of the most important locations in the books, where so much happens across the course of all of it, and it's like it's so important, and it hadn't arrived yet. And when it finally did appear on screen, it was like, this is so cool to see.
Yeah.
And they had all the stuff with Drummer and Ashford on the sort of colony vehicle bay. This bit actually very well done.
Go.
And that's really, really nice, nicely done. The way they can cut off for the green screen or whatever with the bit of drum out of shot.
I think they did a really good job of translating a lot of this concept art into what the show ended up being visually.
Yeah, really good.
The huge props to the VFX team in general. I think,
absolutely.
The Expanse, they deserve all the praise in the world.
Incredibly talented people.
Yeah.
So here's the what we saw this as a diagram earlier, and we now see it as the final concept art. And this is very cool. It's also not quite how I expected from the book. This is the one part of the Behemoth, the docks, that are not how I envisioned them, really.
Did you not imagine them underneath the entire thing, just like near the engines?
That's where they were, but it's also kind of narrow. Like I always imagined there being this like vast concourse for with all these ships in it, and I don't know why in retrospect I thought that way, because of course the ships would be like externally berthed. It wouldn't be like a housing or whatever. But a lot of the time you're in the books and all the characters are running around in the docks, and you're thinking of docks as like, oh, there must be all these ships moored on like rods everywhere.
I think on any other scale, this would be a huge docking ring, but it's only because it's next to what is otherwise an overly large drum that it looks small by comparison. But if you think of the scale of like that circular docking ring there, that is massive. That's massive. It's only because it's next to some absurd ship it looks small by comparison.
Okay, we're on to the Scirocco now.
Which was our most recent video, I think.
At the time of release,
At the time of release.
And there's some nice orthographics here, which I like having the little scale thing in the corner there. You can see compared to the Nathan Hale and the Anubis and the Rosi. And also, until I started doing this, I had no idea this thing had breaching pods, which is really cool. I always thought those circular things were just like greeblies.
Yeah, you can see them marked out, the 6 in the middle line on the left-hand ship, and then in the middle of the one next to it as well. The little like circular things.
Yeah.
Actually, breaching pods. So
really cool idea. It's also, this is one thing where the MCRN, don't have too many designs in the show. Obviously, they're limited by, they design ships as and when they need them for storytelling purposes.
This is really the MCRN ship. That's sort of all-purpose. You see it like used a lot.
Whenever they need to hold the flag for the MCRN in the show, they use this ship, which is why we needed to write it as basically being a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
So it's a troop transport that takes advantage of the fact that Martian troops are so much better by carrying fewer troops and having more weapons, so it can also be a frontline attack cruiser, which is why it has a light railgun, which is turreted, because the MCRN can do that, as we've set up.
Yep.
And we named the dropships Chariot type, which I was quite happy with. And also, I was we're quite lucky with this. If I quickly, I'll just quickly point out that I didn't know this was Scirocco class until they said it in the episode.
Oh, that's right.
Because my starting this series had been delayed for various reasons. And I'd been thinking this was one of the ships that we'd have to come up with a name for because it hadn't had its class name revealed. And then I was watching season 3 and they just called it Scirocco class. And I was like, oh my, it's a good job this was delayed because if it hadn't been, I might have named it something.
Did you have a name lined up for that, by the way?
I can't remember. I went through a few of them. I think I was looking at Japanese swords and stuff because of the Tachi. I was trying to extend that logic and like Wakasashi class or something. I don't know. But also, if we can look at this, is really I want to
Wasabi class.
I want to talk about this artwork because we'll see in a minute that, and I'm quite pleased with myself here. We'll see in a minute that the original piece of artwork for this actually has one of the 3 dropships leaving the bay. But because we wanted to parallax it and make the ship look like it was in motion, we basically needed to put that dropship back into the bay. So I've photoshopped the leftmost bay onto the right one.
Did a good job with this as well.
And I'm so pleased with how seamless it looks because it's hard to tell that. Yes, that's the original. That's also edited. That's what
this has also been edited. Oh, here's one of the dropship.
The chariot type.
This is cool. I really like this concept art. Actually, this is I think one of the first like proper piece of concept art that we got for the series of ships that we've had that really probably illustrated an external feature of the ship.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
it's a shame that we didn't have time to parallax this because this, those of you that were watching Spacedock's social media will know we had a bit of a data loss.
Oh, that's horrible.
A lot of problems. This episode ended up having to be made more.
It was like at the end of the week that we're putting out a video every day, which was a lot of work.
Because this shot is just begging to be parallaxed at some point, but it is really nice, and I like how you can see the Marines, one of whom is in Goliath armor, and there's like a height difference on the ramp there and all that.
Do we ever see the drop pods externally in the show properly?
We see them
other than is it these dropships that go down to Earth in
with Bobby season 2? Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So here's the nice orthographics. These didn't make it into the episode. I disregard the shape of the railgun on the left model there, which doesn't look like the finalized version. They obviously go through various stages in design of these things before they get to the final one. Mm-hmm. But I quite like how everything on this ship is eclipsed by its sort of shape so that it can enter the atmosphere without damaging all of these weapons and sensors that are stuck to the top of it.
Yeah.
Like they're all in its shadow, which is very cool. It has VLS rocket tubes at the back there. Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the original artwork of the dropship leaving.
You can see it on the frontmost docking port there.
Which I edited to put back in. Also, I'd like to point out that it's interesting that the Scirocco is the first of their class, which is why it's called Scirocco class. This ship is presumably at least the lifetime of one vessel old, if you know what I mean. So it can't be brand new. But I made it older than the Corvette class and the Doniger class and the Morrigan class, because I wrote in that all three of those types were introduced as part of a very recent modernization program.
Oh, okay.
Which I thought it made sense that the Corvette and the Morrigan were designed at the same time as the Doniger to complement them, because they all work as one unit. So the Scirocco is a little older, and it's been through a few modifications, which is why the Hammurabi has some very slight changes to its visual setup. And you got some great shots for this one, because there's some gorgeous beauty shots of the Hammurabi.
Yeah, there's some good ones, especially in season 3. These like big, long, sweeping ones. In terms of it in action, the only good shot of it doing stuff is either at Ganymede. Shortly after that gets attacked, you can briefly see it firing its PTCs, and when it's racing to Phoebe, you get a good shot of it firing its torpedoes, which I was hugely thankful for, because if you want to take a still from a shot in the Expanse, a lot of the time everything's moving very quickly and you get a lot of motion blur, so like proper stills end up not coming out so great. But fortunately in that scene it was framed completely like stationary. So you get like great illustration of how all 5 of its torpedo bays fire.
Yeah,
in that.
It's really cool. Also, there's a gorgeous long beauty shot of a deceleration burn from the Hammurabi. In season 3.
That's one of the nice things about the Expanse. After putting all the footage together, you realize most of the time it breaks that convention visually. When you're seeing ships fly through space, a lot of the time you envision them like firing their engines and shooting to where they're going to go.
Yeah.
But in the Expanse, they're almost always decelerating. They'll be arriving to where they need to go. They'll be facing backwards and they'll be decelerating towards the planet that they're going in orbit of. And it's a little thing, but it's great. It's so cool. And there are so many shots of that in the videos and the Expanse that illustrate that really well. I will say, just quickly, thanks to the Expanse for being consistent in where you place your ship shots, because it's pretty consistently immediately before a scene change.
Yeah.
So all you have to do is look at the footage, see when it's let's say the UNN guys are talking.
Yeah.
Find where they're going to switch over to like the NTRN characters talking, and then just find where that scene transition is, because it'll almost always
establishing shots.
Yeah, it'll be an establishing shot of the ship moving or whatever it is. And that's where you get the footage from. So yeah, they are consistent in how they do that.
Now, for the last shot here, we get a great look at the docking bays for the dropships, and I really like the exposed launch bays on the Scirocco class. This kind of like hanging sort of grips for the dropships looks really nice. And a lot of people were commenting on the asymmetry of only having one railgun.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of people saying that as well.
Yeah, I was wondering, because one of the things I initially experimented with is the idea that maybe the Scirocco is a sub-variant of a standard MCRN cruiser that maybe wouldn't have the dropships but would have 2 railguns. But obviously the job we're doing is to work with what assets the Expanse people have to make it make sense. So sometimes the best thing to do is to just make it so a ship is really good at lots of different things, so that the asset is most useful as a narrative
personally,
tool.
I quite like asymmetry aesthetically. I think it's quite cool when you have something, you have a base and you have all of its functionality quite visible.
Yeah.
It's like this section of it here on the right is where it has its railgun, and that's it. It's got that functionality. On the left, it's got its launch bays or whatever else. I think it makes it visually more obvious what role it does with asymmetry like that.
The Scirocco is a ship that very nicely communicates its job visually just by looking at it. Like you can tell that it's a troop carrier because it's got the. I think we're out of images actually. I think that's,
is that last one? And then we're back to this. Yeah.
So obviously we didn't use the proto-molecule shots of the Agatha King because it doesn't really fit our glorify the ship MO with.
Also, it might have been spoilery for people that want to watch the show.
Yeah, which is also the same reason why we never used any ring space shots.
Yeah,
because there's a few shots of the Shushen and stuff, which is like has the blue nebula background, and
same with Hammurabi as well.
Yeah. But anyway, just to cap off, then I've said this a million times, but thank you so much to the Expanse team, to James S.A. Corey.
So incredibly lucky to be
massively privileged to be working on this. It's incredible. And I hope all of you are happy with the
Force Recon series.
The reasoning we've put behind naming these things, and the and like the sort of manufacturers and class names we've come up with. I hope we're doing justice to the world that this is set in, because it takes a lot of research and work to make something that fits, and I'm tremendously excited to be doing it.
Yeah. Well, I think you're doing a great job.
Well, thank you very much. You're making some really amazing shots with the editing and stuff, and the fact sheets and all that.
I'll do my best. Well, thank you so much for watching, everyone.
Yeah,
we hope this has been interesting.
Force Recon will be back, not this weekend, but the weekend after.
Yep.
And you'll be
very exciting ship next weekend.
Which I'm sure you're all looking forward to. And we'll see you then. Thank you all for listening.
Okay, see you next time.